You know that feeling, right? That constant tug of war over the screen in your kid's hands. Is it this amazing tool for learning, or is it just a major distraction? It's a debate that's happening in pretty much every household around the world. But what happens when that private family argument spills out and becomes a city-wide public battle? Well, that's exactly what happened in one city in Japan.
So let's just cut right to the chase. Should the government, yeah, the government, have the power to limit your child's screen time? And I'm not talking about a suggestion, I mean a hard legal limit. Sounds kind of crazy, right? But this isn't some hypothetical debate anymore.
Okay, so let's get specific. In Toyake City, Japan, a proposal hit the table that sparked an absolute firestorm. We're talking about a mandatory 2-hour daily limit on screen time for kids. And again, this was not some friendly guideline. This was a potential law. And as you can imagine, it forced everybody, parents, teachers, even the kids themselves, to draw a line in the sand and pick a side.
All right, so first up, let's look at the case for this limit. What were they thinking? Well, the people who supported it, they weren't saying technology is evil, not at all. They framed it as a public health thing, like a necessary shield to protect kids in this age of just constant digital overload. Okay, so diving in, their whole argument really stood on three main pillars. First, they said a digital detox, less screen time, means better grades. Simple as that. Second, they pointed to all the serious health risks. We're talking physical and mental stuff. And third, and this one's a big one for parents, they argued it provides some much-needed backup. So on the academic side, they got pretty scientific with it. They brought up the brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex. Now, you can think of this as like the brain's command center. It's in charge of focus, making good decisions, all that important stuff. And the argument was that way too much screen time can actually mess with how it works. So their logic was pretty straightforward. Less screen time equals a healthier, sharper brain, which, you guessed it, leads to better grades in school. And what about the parents? The ones on the front lines of this battle every single day. The idea wasn't to take away their power, but to actually give them more of it. Think about it. When your kid hits you with the classic, "But all my friends are still online," you can come back with, "Sorry, kid, it's not me, it's a citywide rule." See how that changes things? It suddenly turns that lonely personal battle into a shared community standard. You're not the bad guy anymore. You're all in it together. But of course, there are two sides to every story. And the other side, well, they saw things very, very differently. To them, this wasn't some helpful safeguard. It was a massive government overstep, maybe even a dangerous one. And their case was just as organized. They came back with three big points of their own. First, they said, hey, it's not about how long kids are on screens, it's about what they're doing. Quality over quantity. Second, they warned that a rigid limit like this could seriously stunt the growth of crucial IT skills. And the big one, the real kicker, was that this is basically the government marching into your house and undermining your right to parent your own kid. And this is a really interesting point. They basically said, we need to stop thinking about these devices as just toys. In today's world, a screen can be a textbook, a library, a place to learn coding, the whole shebang. So they argued putting a 2-hour limit on that, it's like telling a student they can only read their books for 2 hours a day. It just doesn't make sense, and it could put these kids way behind. Okay, so this is where it gets really good, because the two sides weren't just making their own points in a vacuum. Nope. They were directly going after each other's core arguments. It was a real head-to-head clash of ideas. And you can see this perfectly when you look at the academics argument. It's just a perfect snapshot of the whole debate. You've got one side saying, this 2-hour limit protects kids. It forces them to go be creative in the real world and develop focus. And the other side is saying, no way. That exact same limit robs them of the chance to learn the digital skills they absolutely need for their future. It's the same rule, with two totally opposite interpretations. The anti-limit side also landed a pretty solid punch on the whole scientific argument. They basically said, hold on a minute, all your data shows is correlation, not causation, which is a fancy way of saying, sure, maybe kids with low grades spend a lot of time on their phones, but does the phone cause the bad grades? Or are kids who are already struggling in school just more likely to escape into their phones? It's a killer question, right? Is the smartphone the problem, or is it just a symptom of a bigger problem? And the fight over freedom was just as intense. The pro-limit side made an analogy. They said, look, this is just like a public health rule, like speed limits or not letting kids buy cigarettes, something we do for the greater good. But the other side called foul on that comparison.
They shot back, "That's a terrible analogy. Smoking is always bad, but screen time can be amazing for learning." They argued this wasn't about public health at all. It was about the government forcing its own values onto every single family.
So when you boil it all down, it really comes to this. What's the best way to help kids navigate this stuff? The pro-limit side basically said, look, education is great, but it takes forever. We need a safety net to protect kids right now. But the anti-limit side came back and said, that's not a safety net, that's a cage. The only real answer is to teach kids better and give them better things to do offline, not just impose some rigid top-down rule.
So after all the back and forth, all the passionate arguments and clever rebuttals, the formal debate came to an end, and a panel of judges had to make the call. They had to pick a winner.
And the verdict came in. The winner was the affirmative side, the side arguing for the 2-hour limit. So in this particular debate, they were seen as making the stronger case. The big question, of course, is why?
Well, the judge's reasoning really boiled down to 3 key things. First was just logical cohesion. The pro-limit side's arguments were super tight. Everything they said tied back to this one simple goal: healthy child development. Second, their evidence. The way they used data, framing it as a kind of risk management for kids, that was just seen as more persuasive. And finally, their rebuttals were just stronger. They did a great job turning the arguments about IT skills and family freedom into a conversation about quality over quantity and building a community consensus.
Now, let's be super clear. The judge wasn't saying the anti-limit side was totally wrong. In fact, they got credit for raising some really critical points about freedom and the future. But, and this is a big but, their main weakness was that they were great at pointing out the flaws in the plan, but not so great at offering their own concrete solutions to the very real problems of, tech addiction and falling grades.
And so, all of this leaves us right back at the heart of the matter. It's this fundamental question. When it comes to our kids and their screens, what's our main job? Is it to protect them from harm, even if that means drawing some really hard lines? Or is it to prepare them for a future that's undeniably digital, even if that means living with a few more risks? The formal debate in that one city in Japan might have a winner, but for the rest of us, this conversation is a long, long way from over.